All right, good evening, everyone. And to introduce you to my talk, I would love for us to do a very quick and simple exercise. Take a minute and imagine deeply that one day you wake up and you're exactly where you want to be in life. You've achieved your dreams, built your goals, and you have everything you've ever wanted at the tip of your finger. Take a minute to really picture that scenario. Think about all the details present in this dream scenario of yours. Now, that's a pretty big scenario to think about, isn't it? Now, in that same scenario you just thought about, think about all the actions that you might have taken that would have led you to that level of success. For many of us, success feels like it should be the result of a big, somewhat defining moment that in some way defines how the rest of our lives goes. But what if I told you that success isn't really working that way? For you to understand me better, let me use a simple iceberg analogy. This top, white part of the iceberg actually corresponds to this common general misconception that I believe everyone has had at some point in their lives. That success comes just by waiting for the perfect moment, or even from an external factor like luck. For me, as an individual, I don't believe in luck, because as some friend said, luck is when preparation meets opportunity. But actually, this bottom black part of the iceberg actually correspond to those small, seemingly insignificant actions we could take every single day that actually build that dream life. Those are the small moves you truly aren't aware of, and are the type of moves that most likely will lead you into success. Today, I want to talk about something that is not just beneficial, but essential: constant improvement. For this, there's a Japanese philosophy called Kaizen that focuses on making small 1% improvements each day. Generally, the idea of Kaizen doesn't really go that deep. It just states that you must do your 1% improvement of the day, whether it's in your work, your health, or your own personal development. And that's pretty much it. Even though Kaizen holds a very powerful principle that states, even if small, change can completely transform your life. Just think about it. If you improve by just 1% each day, that's almost 38 times better than when you started at the end of a year, for example. But don't get me wrong. It's not about quick wins or overnight success, even though those two aren't real. It's more about sustainable, persistent, deliberative effort. And what I mean by sustainable is that what you do today, you should be able to do tomorrow, even aiming a little bit higher every time. In that way, you'll keep yourself from burning out in reaching your goals. It doesn't really matter how big they are. Now, here's the harsh truth. Every day you don't move towards something meaningful is time you'll never get back. It's time you lost. It's easy to think that success will come just by waiting for the perfect moment. But let's be real, success doesn't really come from waiting. It comes from action. And what I mean by action isn't really grand gestures, leaps, or something extraordinary out of your capacities. I mean something just as simple as showing up every day. But this all looks very flashy, right? Almost too good to be true. For this, let's move on to some real-life results of this process. In this case, my results. This is Evoke, my own web design agency, which I co-founded at 17 years old. At first, I really didn't have a solid background in development, and I knew a thing or two about coding. My friend, which I co-founded Evoke with, was exactly in the same situation. And let's be real, Evoke started as a complete joke. But by implementing this 1% mentality each day, we took Evoke from a joke into a serious web design agency which generates about $1,000 to $3,000 per month in revenue. Now, you might be asking yourself, how exactly did we implement this 1% mentality into something like building a business? If you're thinking we work like slaves for 12 hours with no rest, well, let me tell you that you're wrong. It was, in fact, way more simpler than that. It was like day 1, designing the logo. Day 2, talking to people. Day 3, watching a 10-minute video on how to actually build a website. As simple as those steps sound, those are the kinds of steps that took Evoke into success. And what I mean by success isn't really that Evoke nowadays is the biggest company in the market, but we've done some pretty amazing things. For example, meet Mr. Alejandro Lema, which is a CEO at Avanzada, one of the biggest mining corporations in the whole country. A few months ago, we've worked with them designing their website. And take a look at what they had to say. Professional work, great communication, perfect website, highly recommended. Would you believe that kind of work was provided by people who really didn't have an idea what they were doing? I wouldn't. Or take a look at these 2 pictures. These 2 pictures correspond to one of our most current projects. Take a look at the level of quality and professionalism present in these 2 pictures. Would you believe this type of quality was brought by people who didn't have an idea of how to build a website? I repeat myself, I really wouldn't. And in these types of things, you truly realize the power of this process. And trust me when I say this, if you apply this process consistently and accurately, almost anything can be possible for you. But now, what about my own personal experience with this process, outside of work? As for myself, this process changed my life instantly. And when I say instantly, I mean it. Because before, I wasn't moving forward. I felt like I was stuck, almost stagnant. And I was genuinely worried that I would spend the rest of my days like that. And I can assure some of the people in this very audience can relate to this feeling. Trust me, I've been there. And now, thanks to this process, I can proudly say that for every day that passes, I take one small step forward, one at a time, of course. Because today, as of November 15th of 2024, I can look back exactly 7 months from now. April 15th, the very day I decided I was applying this mentality into my life. And ever since then, I just can remember myself saying, just take one step today. And as a result, I have instantly changed my life. Maybe not in a substantial way, like I didn't just become instantly successful or anything, but now I've given myself some sort of purpose with each day. And now I'm surely but slowly moving forward. But I'm forgetting one of the most important concepts in this whole process, the absolute game changer that most likely will determine if this process really works out for you or it doesn't. Consistency. In essence, consistency is what turns your plans into progress. It's just the repeated act of showing up every day and trying your best. It's the concept that will build your ideas into habits and your habits ultimately into results. It's really not a flashy concept, and in the majority of the cases, not rewarding in the short term. But if you're aiming towards long-term success, consistency can be one of the most important concepts and tools to have in your arsenal. Now, for you to understand consistency better, take the flywheel example. When you first push a flywheel, it's slow. You keep pushing it, and still, it's very, very slow. But when you're wondering to yourself if this is even worth it, the flywheel starts to get faster and faster. Till, surprise, the flywheel is moving on its own. You don't even have to push it anymore. That's how consistency works. Small efforts eventually build up big momentum. And once that momentum is going, it's easier to keep it up. So, what's the takeaway of all of this? The purpose of my 2 examples aren't really showcasing my own personal results, or in somehow bragging about them. I want you to understand that this process is way more achievable than you think. If it isn't clear enough, take my example again. I know it's very repetitive. But exactly 7 months ago, I was a normal guy who didn't have any extraordinary ability on anything. And just by applying this process, you could see everything I could achieve. Now let me ask you, what's really preventing you from doing the same? And I quote the very phrase that changed my whole life. You must change your life in order to change your life. Make that small change. Do it once every day, and eventually you'll realize that you've made a bigger change than you could have ever imagined.